Hello, everybody. My name is Rosie, and welcome to Turn on the AC, a podcast where we talk about what it is to be an Asian Christian creative navigating through life in today's modern society. We hope to create community, inspire, challenge, and encourage our fellow creatives with each episode. Hey everybody, welcome back to Turn on the AC. Today I have a dear friend of mine, Alison Chang, with me. Alison is a Taiwanese American filmmaker and storyteller, discovering at a young age that the craft of editing sparked a passion deep inside of her, and has since been following the passion with faith, wonder, and determination. So she was born and raised in Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex. She started off working in various areas of film and video content in Austin, Texas, before moving to Los Angeles, California, where she is currently now working as an assistant editor in the motion picture industry. So although filmmaking is her craft of choice, Alison loves all creative mediums, including photography, fashion, and design, and in a pre-pandemic world, could be found frequently traveling and enjoying new experiences. She also loves connecting deeply with others and having soul conversations like the one on this podcast. So ultimately, Alison hopes to live a life that encourages others to live fully into the gifts and passions God has given them, particularly in the Asian American community, and to make her younger self proud. So Alison, thank you so much for being here today. I am super excited for our conversations that we're going to have. And to start off this podcast is a question that I've been sort of asking everyone is, what is one piece of advice that you would give to your younger self?
Well, thank you, Rosie, for having me. I'm really excited that we're finally here after hearing about this podcast and just all of your passion for it. And wow, I can't believe we're here. This is awesome.
I know, from like just talking about it to actually doing it is fun.
Yeah. So, wow. Okay. First question: what advice would I give to my younger self? So I wrote to myself, "You're more right about yourself than you think. Try that thing that you're drawn to."
I like that. You're more right about yourself than you think. Like, what circumstance do you feel like that spoke more loudly to you when you thought that you're more right about yourself than you think?
Yeah, so I think that kind of is something I've been thinking a lot about lately as we go into maybe more of my story. But I think when I was younger, I struggled a lot with self doubt, being both just not in a way that I was an insecure person, but I think I had these ideas that I was scared of trying. And now looking back at where I am now and all the things that have happened, I wish I could go back and tell myself, don't be scared to just try it. It probably will turn out better than you think. You're probably you're probably right about that thing that you think you're either wired to do or you have an interest in. I think it will actually lead to good things. So something like that.
Yeah, I like that. Thank you for sharing that advice. So, just to dive in a little bit deeper into who you are, could you share a bit of your testimony, how you found Jesus, how he's helped you through your creative journey, and where you feel like he is leading you now?
Yeah. So I was not born into a Christian family, but I started going to church when my mom started taking me at a young age, elementary school.
Mhm.
How I found Jesus is a pretty funny story. After going to church for about a year, in my Sunday school class, the teacher asked if anyone wanted to, accept Jesus into their heart, and they could, by doing so, they could have free salvation. And so, being the opportunist that I am, I was like, all you have to do is just pray and you get to go to heaven for free. Like, why not? Sign me up. So I was like praying the prayer, and I mean, in all seriousness, I understood what I was doing in terms of asking Jesus, but the concept of free salvation seemed too good to be true, but also an opportunity that I couldn't pass up on.
Right? Who doesn't like free things?
Exactly. So yeah, but as I've gotten older, I think my journey with Jesus and also how it plays into my creativity has taken a lot of turns. I would say significantly, this goes into how I got into filmmaking as a career, but as I just became more, learned more about being a Christian and walking with Jesus, I also at the same time, specifically in college, was struggling with what I wanted to do as a career. And I knew from the very beginning, at a young age, as we were talking about, that I really would like to be a filmmaker or an editor of some sort. But I can go into that specific story in a second. But I ended up going to like a college that was nothing to do with filmmaking, but was more about the I mean, it was a good school, top ranked and stuff like that. And the goal to me personally was to find what is the one other thing I can do that is not filmmaking that could give me the same kind of joy. And so I think I went to college trying to find that one other thing, knowing that thinking that I wasn't going to do filmmaking. And then in college, God just kind of changed all of that and really turned down its head and led me on this journey of faith and creativity, even now, of just being like, you you don't have to walk the same path as everyone else, but
Mm,
in fact it's going to be a very winding road, but you will get there.
yeah.
So
I like that. I think there's so much truth to like what you're saying that in a sense, like we're always comparing our journeys and our faith to get there to other people, but reminding ourselves that God does have a different path for us. And it may not look like the traditional way, but we get there in the end because it's all part of God's plan. And so, could you tell us a little bit more into how you got into video editing and storytelling?
yeah, so like I said, so basically I discovered that I really had a passion for filmmaking and specifically editing when I made this we were making this video for my church's youth group to honor our seniors at their graduation, and it ended up just being this really goofy parody of a script that I wrote and directed and edited and brought my friends together to put together. And then when I was going through the editing process, I realized that I spent 24 hours straight editing
Oh
this
my
video and I
goodness.
didn't eat and I didn't sleep. And I realized that, oh, I think this is what people say when they say they have a passion for something, that you can be so engrossed into something and you realize so much time has passed and you didn't even need to sleep, apparently. So I knew there was something special there, but just coming from a more traditional Asian household, my parents are immigrants. Of course, that idea was just too difficult for my family to really support me in at that time. So, and I understood their concerns. And so when it came time to choosing colleges, I had opportunities to go to schools, some out of state that would maybe give me more opportunities to work in film, but I decided to just kind of pick the one that would be best for my family at the time, which is to go somewhere that was still in state, but a private school that was really well ranked and
Mm,
would provide me a lot of opportunities, just not in film. And again, like I said, the goal was for me was to figure out if there was anything in the world I liked doing other than film that I could have a career in.
yeah.
And so with that mindset, I kind of put down these ideas of creative pursuits my freshman year of college and just tried to really focus on doing well in the general science courses and math courses that you're supposed to take, thinking, oh, maybe, yeah, I'll do something like economics or something that would still kind of be acceptable to my Asian parents. And
Mhm.
I just realized my freshman year towards the end that there was something different about me. I felt really spiritually and creatively dry is the best
Mm.
word to describe it. Just kind of feeling like a certain energy source that I used to have from just being able to enjoy things creatively, even for fun, wasn't there more because I had just stopped doing all of that. And so it started off, me starting off to do creative things again was at first just a way for me to not feel that dryness anymore and to just kind of just find a source of just joy again.
Mhm.
But then two things happened. One, I started getting more external recognition for what I was doing. So I started doing photography for fun and also for just campus organizations and stuff. And then I realized that people really liked my work and they were asking me to shoot things and eventually getting paid for it. And then the other thing is I had submitted just a short film that I made in high school to my school's film festival and ended up um, getting an award in the category that I was in. And even though there wasn't a lot of competition, I
Awesome.
will
Yeah.
admit there wasn't a lot of competition. So,
Hey, but
you
that's
know,
still really cool to win an award at a film festival. Be proud of
yeah,
it for sure.
yeah. So I was like, okay, well, that makes me feel better that there's a external recognition for what I'm doing. So at least not only do I want to do this, I'm like not too bad at it, kind of thing.
Yeah.
And then actually, there's a third thing is that um, there is a organization, YouTube channel. They're known as Jubilee Media Today, a pretty popular YouTube channel. But back in the day, they were called by a different name, Jubilee Project. And the founders, actually, we know one of the founders well. It was our
Yeah.
mutual friend who brought us together.
He really did. Honestly, we're friends because of Eight Parables.
Yes. And who Edward Lee is both the founder of Eight Parables and was one of the co-founders of Jubilee Media or Project back then. And so they came to my school and also they screened a short film that was just really impactful and just really on the nose about my life at the time. It was kind of it's called Dear Daniel. You can watch it online, but it also told the short story of a fictional character who was struggling with what they wanted to do in life. They wanted to be a filmmaker, but their parents wanted him to be a lawyer, and just the struggles that they went through. And there was even a component about mental health that was also very personally resonant to me. And so I just kind of watched that film, and just sometimes you watch a film or you hear someone tell a story, or you just get kind of a moment where you're like, okay, I know what I need to do next. And
Yeah.
so that's kind of the feeling I had after watching that video, is that I knew what I needed to do next was to continue pursuing not as a career yet, but I knew I needed to continue pursuing creativity and creative pursuits in my life again, because it was almost like I realized I couldn't I couldn't be me without it. Like it just had to be part of my life somehow. Maybe not as a career yet, but it just had to be a part of my life somehow, is to continue to be a creative. So yeah, with all of these things, the real testimony comes in here. So basically, between my between my sophomore and junior year, I think, but basically one of the summers between years, I ended up being at a crossroads. I had found that I really liked psychology as a major, and so
Mhm.
I had gone to a point where I was majoring in psychology and and kind of studying neuropsychology as a concentration. Well, the major was called cognitive science, to be specific. So all things of the brain, so I actually found that really interesting. And so an alternate career path opened up where I could see myself maybe doing clinical psychology or neuroclinical psychology, where you're studying the brain and you're helping people uh, either with diseases or therapy or things like that.
Yeah.
And so that was a potential path that I kind of carved out and was like, oh, yeah, maybe I could do this. And so one summer I was both I had two summer jobs. I was working at a neuroscience lab, kind of studying like MRIs and stuff like that. And it was pretty cool actually, studying how trauma affects the brain and things like that.
Wow,
And
yeah.
then yeah. And then the other summer job was working at my campus's digital media lab, which was kind of where all the AV equipment was, and you could check in and out media equipment for people. And there's also just a computer lab for people to work on their media and video projects. And it was a job that I already had on campus, but then they increased my responsibilities over the summer to where I could actually start shooting videos for them, just kind of instructional videos and stuff like that. So I was at this a unique crossroads where I had two just very viable paths in my to put for my career, and I just was doing both because it was the summer and I didn't know which one was going to pan out. And then maybe like 1 or 2 weeks into my lab, I remember I was talking to my PI and just having a conversation, and I just hear this very loud and clear voice. I don't know if it was in my head, but it sounded like it was coming from somewhere else, but it definitely was in my head.
Yeah.
But basically, there's just this loud, very just just very strong voice telling me in the lab, you need to get out of there.
Wow. Like, as you're talking to your instructor?
Yeah. Yeah. It was just like this voice in my head, like, you need to get out of here. It was so like strong and
Yeah.
clear that I even stopped my conversation with my PI and just kind of was like, oh, I need to go to the bathroom. Like, I was just so shook basically that I went to the bathroom and I was like, what is going on? Did I just hear what I actually heard? And
Mm,
I didn't, end up leaving that day in particular, but I did go home and just kind of feel like, what am I supposed to do with this? It kind of felt like a voice that I couldn't ignore.
mhm.
And so after some lot of prayer and reflection, I felt like this was more than just a voice. I felt like this was a um an opportunity for me to really like reflect on where I was going that summer. And I decided to quit my job at the lab. So and pursue just I guess a creative career full time. It was very a very bold move. And the best part or the funniest part is that I didn't tell my parents that I had quit my job at the lab.
Oh my goodness. I was just gonna ask, yeah, what did they think about that? Like
Yeah. So for about a month or so, I didn't tell my parents and I just kind of carried on as if I was still working both jobs.
Yeah.
And they would call me and they would just be like, how is everything? I'd be like, oh, it's great.
Allison, such a rebel, my goodness.
Well, it caught up to me, and
Mm,
finally, about a month later, my mom in particular, who is a very strong believer that I admire greatly for her faith, she finally, she didn't press me or anything. It was just another random day, and she called me, and I think I just couldn't take the guilt any longer, so she asked me,
yeah.
she asked me, yeah, like how everything was going. And I was like, I couldn't take anymore. So I just broke down and I told her everything that happened. And I told her that I feel like through that experience that I learned that had wired everybody to be different with specific gifts and talents. And I felt that it could potentially be a waste not a waste, but it could potentially be not honoring to him if
Mm,
I didn't try to explore these
yeah,
talents fully.
yeah.
And that was, to be honest, that was kind of my Christian way of trying to, get out of this and not be in too much trouble. But I did believe it. But it was also like, you know,
Yeah, like, "Hey,
like,
mom, this is not just
yeah,
for me, but"
yeah. But and then it was so funny. So I told her all this, and like one of those things where you have confessed something really big and you just wait for the other person's response. And I just felt like the silence that went on forever.
Mm,
And I was just like on the phone waiting for a response, waiting for her to chew me out. And so she started talking, and I immediately went on the defensive because I thought she was about to yell at me. And then she just says, "Well, if you really feel like this is your passion, then your dad and I will support you." And it was one of those things, like, she was saying that while I was like, "Oh, no, 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 but wait." And then I was like, "Wait, what did you say?"
Oh man. So you're
So,
like, I'm ready to fight for this.
yeah. And then I
Man,
was
I
like, "What?"
love that. Yeah.
So, so yeah, I'm very, very thankful because at that time, I think God really needed knew that I needed my parents' support to do this, as
Mm.
rebellious as I was at the time. So, having their support was really felt like, okay, God is actually opening this door for me to try this. And yeah, so from there is where I started really going full force into figuring out how to make a creative career for myself full time. So
I love that. I love how God, like, spoke so prominently to you and how you're at shock, but you're able to kind of, like, reflect and be like, "Okay, where do I wanna go in my life?" And it's so true. I feel like when your parents stand by you, it makes you so much, um confident in yourself and that you can do it because you know that they have your back. And it just reminded me of when my dad first told me he was proud of me, and I was like
mm,
and especially because it's been a couple years and I decided to actually pursue creatives like communications and film and media, and him saying he was proud was a moment where I was in shock because it showed that he was supportive of my dreams, and so, like you said,
mhm,
after you got their support, you could go 100% in, and you're like, "How do we make this actually happen?" You know, even though
yeah.
regardless, we're still going to do it. It it's just like the
it
icing
it
on
makes
the
it a lot
cake.
easier, yeah.
Right, right, where you don't have to feel like you're disobeying them in a sense or like, that they can't be proud of you in another sense. But why do you think you were not afraid, but I guess you couldn't tell them the first time that you quit the job? Like, what was holding you back?
uh just obviously they were gonna like yell at me, but not just the act of yelling at me, but well, we this was a constant conversation that we had just throughout growing up and up to that point.
Mhm,
I mean, I was always a very creatively inclined kid in school. I
mhm,
always loved things like English and anything that I could be creative in. All my projects were usually art related.
yeah,
And so they knew I was like a creative child. But then when it came to, how to earn a living and, contribute to society, they had more traditional ideas. Also because I think they just, were, concerned for my well-being, and obviously didn't want me to go through hardships, and they wanted me to have like financial stability and stuff. So the constant message that I got from them, both directly and indirectly, was, it's really good to have creative pursuits. Even my mom, she's very talented in just like fine arts and painting and things like that. But the message they sent me was, it's good to have this, but mainly as a hobby. Like,
yeah,
you can't do this as a career. And it didn't help that my older brother is very similar. That he also kind of decided around the age that I was. He's older, but when he was in high school and things like that, that he wanted to do things like art and film. And so I have to thank him a little bit because I think he kind of, took the brunt of it really. So
yeah,
I thought I had it bad. He definitely took more of the brunt of it when he decided to do like a creative career. And so I think they like doubly didn't want that for another child. And I think that also made me feel bad that I didn't want them to have to go through that again with another
yeah.
child. So I think I was a little bit more willing to, go to a school where I could try to find something else other than film or art or creative like pursuits, just because I knew how hard it was on them. So I tried. I want to say that I tried. Uh, but yeah, so we had, prior to that conversation, it was a constant conversation that we had, whether I was home from school or not, and just kind of being like, oh, I see you're like doing more photography things. That's cool. Just, make sure it's a hobby kind of thing. So,
Yeah, I can
I
relate to
kind
that. Yeah.
of, yeah, kind of felt like I knew what they would say if I told them it was not a hobby. So, yeah.
Yeah. Wow. That's that's it's really crazy how even though we're like from different culture and ethnic backgrounds, like how our Asian parents can still think the same in terms
Yeah.
of like going for a creative career. I can definitely relate. And follow-up question is your brother still doing creative things?
Yeah, so again, my parents just really just drew the lucky sticks when they had two kids who neither one of them is doing a traditional job. So my brother did end up doing filmmaking for a time, but then he decided, that's not unpredictable enough. So let me just go be an entrepreneur instead.
Wow.
So no, my brother has a really interesting journey that could also take a whole podcast episode, really. But I look up to him so much because I think he really opened up that world of possibilities to me. He's done so many things in his life and traveled and lived in so many places and just taken a lot of risks.
Yeah.
Uh, Part of that is because of the personality that he has. And one thing that I really admire about him is that he just doesn't it's almost like failure is not a word in his vocabulary, because even when things haven't worked out in his life, he just gets back up and just tries again or tries something else. And I think that is something that's very countercultural, especially in the Asian American community. And so I think having that model to me was definitely probably consciously or subconsciously influenced the decisions I've made today. So it's like it's funny every time he moved to like a new city or something to try another part of his journey. I think people would just think he was crazy, but I always
Mhm.
thought that was super cool.
Aw.
So yeah,
Oh, it's so sweet looking up to your big brother.
yeah.
I definitely love that. I admired that you were able to have sort of like this role model to look forward to, because if he could do it and you saw him fail, but he still went and he still succeeded, then you could do it too. And knowing you, like Allison is definitely a risk taker. She has failure is also not in her dictionary as well. um, so I mean we're gonna dive a little bit more into that as well. But how does your faith play a role or impact the way that you make decisions based on your creativity?
Yeah, to kind of talk about it in two ways. One is, I'd say, artistically, faith is a theme that I hope to explore in whatever work I do, both professional or not. Just even not too specifically, it doesn't have to be spiritual, but I feel like I'm very interested in the concepts of light and darkness, and that reflects a lot in just even my work for fun.
Mm.
And also something I've always wanted to just kind of tell a story around is the book of Job. That's like one of my favorite books in the Bible, so that
Such
tells
a
you a lot
deep
about me.
book, yeah.
I mean, both the book itself is written in a way that is so different than any other of the books in the Bible,
Mhm,
and really kind of is is a narrative kind of story. And also the themes that it explores, particularly suffering and how to respond to it, are themes that I personally really resonate with because of things that have happened in my own life. And so I think yeah, as a Christian, I would love to be able to continue to explore those themes um, in my work and just spark conversation
mm,
with people who both know and don't know Jesus. And on that sense, to go into that, I think, yeah, the biggest thing I would really love my faith and my creativity to just coincide together and play off of each other is to be able to, the way to maybe be a believer, especially in the industry that I'm in right now, is I, to be honest, don't really like a lot of Christian media, or at least like what we stereotypically think as Christian media, where it's very heavy-handed on the message. And
Mhm.
even though the message may be good, it's just really, they just really push it hard in a way that I think kind of defeats the purpose and defeats the effectiveness. And so I personally don't really like watching those kind of like Christian media or content kind of things. But what I really would love to do as a Christian is be in the spaces, not just in predominantly Christian media spaces, but actually be in not predominantly Christian media spaces,
Yeah.
and to create work that Christians don't normally aren't normally associated with, to foster conversations amongst people as to topics that I think as Christians we really need to step up and be a part of, and not just shy away from. So that's something I've been thinking more about lately, about how to um, integrate faith and creativity.
Yeah, watching a lot of Christian movies are super cringy. And it's like, how do we get into that space with, like what you're saying, kind of like that subtle message and not making it like shoving it down your throat, like this is what it is to be a Christian in a sense. But you talked about showing Job's suffering in a sense because you went through that as well, but or it's similar in your life in some ways. And so, why do you feel like it's important to show that in the things that you're going to create, or why do you want to show more of that in the things that you create?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, part of it is just the nature of being a storyteller, and I would say an artist. I think so much of what the way people make art, or the way people make art, is they put um they're trying to express something about themselves or about their experiences. And so, something, the closer that something is to your heart, the more it's going to come out in your art, which I didn't mean for that to rhyme, but it did.
Okay, Allison the rapper, shit.
But yeah, so suffering has just been a particular theme in my life, without, I mean, we can go into it, but yeah, just I've had experiences, mental health um, awareness and advocacy is something that's very important to me, just because I've had people in my life and also myself struggle with mental health in a way that's really stressed to me the importance of making aware how serious of an issue it is, and that it's, and to eliminate the stigma around it. And also, I think suffering is a theme that in some elements of Christian culture, we kind of don't really take as much time to sit in it as we should,
Mm,
because we're, I think for me, something that's been really hard as a Christian is that I don't really resonate with the idea of this kind of like just happy all the time kind of Christian
yeah,
culture, where everything is okay because we have God and stuff. And I mean, like that's still true, but there's still going to be times where, things are just so hard and you just genuinely don't know why you're going through the things you're going through. And you might even be, angry at God because none of it makes any sense. And I think that is something that Job just talks about really well. And I've kind of realized that that could be something, a unique perspective that I personally have, is that I feel like I understand God the most in my times of suffering,
mm,
and feel like I can share about my faith in the most real way when it comes to the seasons where we go through suffering, rather than just kind of being like, oh, being Christian is so great because you're gonna get all the things you want, kind of thing. So Um, yeah, so that's just me personally. I think I'm kind of coming at it that way. And also, I wanted to kind of add on to my earlier answer to your question about
Mm.
how faith and creativity impacts my decisions. But another kind of work that I really want to explore is also these themes of doubt.
Mm.
I think it kind of goes along with suffering, but like one of my favorite films of all time is a film called First Reformed, and it's not a Christian film by any means. It's not, but the story is about a pastor who ends up struggling with his faith, and I think it deals with it because it's not a Christian film. I think it's able to deal with those questions of doubt in a way that is extremely true and real to anybody who deals with any sort of doubt or in their own situation. And I think that's like the kind of work I want to be a part of, where it is able to just really not shy away from how um, dark and difficult doubt can be,
Yeah.
but and then also just to be able to just kind of sit in that and not have any clear answers, and just let people um, interpret that and have that conversation for themselves.
Yeah, thank you for sharing. I think definitely suffering and doubt is something that the church needs to talk more about. Um, because, as like you said in Job, and if we read any other Bibles, any book of the Bible, like a ton of them have a lot of doubt, and a ton of them are like broken and just and it's just people that you expect God not to use, but He uses them, and then He glorifies them, and that's what makes the Bible such an awesome read, because it's exactly who we are. Like, we're just broken people, and like you were saying about doubt and suffering. Yeah, I feel like as my faith matured, I started seeing that doubt and suffering goes hand in hand with like the Christian walk. Even though like we grew up with yeah, I grew up with just this mindset of, oh yeah, I have to be a happy Christian. Like my life has to look like it's all together and God is good all the time. And in a sense, like, yes, God is good all the time. But even though I don't feel like it, like Job, when he was confused and doubting God, it's like we still have to choose and obey God and believe that He has a better plan for us, even if we don't know what the plan is, or even if it is going to be better. We just have to be faithful in Him. And so, thank you for sharing that. And I think it's so relevant today, and especially with doubt. Like doubt is, I feel like if you have doubt in your walk, to not be like, I'm not a good Christian, or I don't have a strong faith. It's like you do. I think that's where it becomes even stronger, is when you persevere, and in that moment of doubt and crisis, you choose to obey God and to choose to follow Him. And so that's, I believe that's how faith grows.
Mm.
And so with that, with your faith and with you not having failure in your dictionary, and we know that I know you made this move from Texas to LA. Like, I mean, you had a plan, but you kind of were just like, I'm just gonna do it. And can you talk to us a little bit more about why you decided to move to LA, and how did you know that it was the right thing for you to do, and in the step of your life or season?
Yeah, so I'd say having been born and raised mostly in Texas, I've never felt like I wanted to stay in Texas
Mm.
and just like grow up in Texas. I think I've wanted to leave there as early as middle school, but the reasons for going to LA were more practical. I had, or the film industry is here, and you know, the weather is nice and in a climate that I can live in and things like that.
Yeah.
But I think it wasn't so much about going to LA in particular, so much as like just wanting to leave where I was, and that reason has changed and evolved over time in a way that I think has really um, impacted me as a person. when making a big kind of move like this. So I think at first it came from an unhealthy place. I was just dealing with a lot of issues where I essentially wanted to run away from my problems. And this was when I was younger and just pre college. I kind of wanted to just not have to deal with the problems that I was dealing with anymore. And then when I decided not to go out of state for college, it became this thing where I was waiting for it to happen eventually, but not really, maybe not doing enough to actually look into how to do it and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But I would say it wasn't until my like 20s that it started to become an unhealthy thing, or it started to become an unhealthy thing in a different way. Is that it became almost like a goal or like an obsession with wanting to move out here, and and it became a source of envy when I would see other people who were in similar situations as mine, or maybe I projected myself onto them and seeing them, take a job across the country, or also make that big move with no plan ahead. And I realized it came from a place of envy of like, I felt like I was just as capable and, risk taking as them. And so why am I not in that situation? Why am I not doing that? Why am I still stuck here? And and just upon further reflection, it really just came out of a place of all of this was wrapped around the idea that like just didn't I didn't have enough faith in myself and God, but kind of like through God myself. Like and some of it came from, you know, earlier when I was even having a hard time telling my parents I want to do a creative career. I think I've always like needed to seek validation from the 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 uh the caretaker figures in my life, whether it's my parents and even like God himself. It kind of almost felt like I needed like permission from them to be able to do this, or else I'd be rebellious or disobeying. And there is a true, I mean, there are senses where you probably are like disobeying um God and stuff like that. But I think for me, it became too much of I was too much dependent on other people's validations for this really big decision. And so ultimately, it kind of came to a head in the last 2 or 3 years where I realized I had unknowingly put myself in a situation where if I didn't if I didn't really start to get serious about um, validating myself, I was going to end up in a situation where I wasn't living authentically to myself and to the people around me. And that was going to ultimately hurt other people and myself in the long run.
Yeah.
And yeah, I just got to a point where I just realized I was like kind of almost living a false version of myself because I was trying so hard to um, be be pleasing other people and myself. Not to an extent that I was like a total people pleaser. Like I knew what I wanted, but just like I thought I could balance both in a way that would be satisfying. But I realized by trying to only be partially true to myself in all these areas of my life, I was authentic in no area of my life. So
Yeah.
um yeah, so that was kind of the emotional journey I had to go through to really get to a place where I think God then finally opened the door to say like it's okay to go to LA. But at the same time, I also didn't really wait for that either.
Mm.
I kind of just made that decision to move because, well, I would say another thing I had to learn to kind of backtrack a little bit. Another thing I had to learn is that I had to learn regardless how to be completely content with where I am in any situation, which I do think is true and right to be content in any situation you're in, before you use putting yourself in a new situation as the next step or as a solution to that problem. So, when you move, your problems don't just go away, they move with you.
Yeah.
And even coming out to LA, I found that to be true. But for me, I think I really needed to be at a place where I was I was content with being in Texas before I think I was emotionally and spiritually and mentally ready to move to the next phase. So I think through a lot of just internal work and reflection, I am thankful to say that I did reach a place where I felt like I was able to be truly content for a time in my life in Texas and really appreciate the things that it had given me. And then I feel like that was the right time to go on to the next thing and not as a means of escape, as I talked about earlier.
Yeah, and I like how you realize that and you're like rewiring yourself to like, okay, let me be content where I'm at. Let me focus on myself. And then when I feel healthy and ready, I mean, no one will ever get healthy, but when I feel more like at a better place with myself, I can move. And that's exactly what you did. And I think that's such a mature and wise thing to do. Because I mean, Allison is such a mature and wise person. She really is. She's like one of the friends that I can go to and just, like, talk to her about, like, mature, wise things and know that, it's always good wise counsel as well. So,
Oh,
thank you
thank
for
you.
sharing that. And,
Yeah.
was it hard to find a community of Christians in LA? And what was your experience like trying to find a group of people that you can call friends, from moving from Texas and having that community to moving to LA and not really knowing anybody or some people?
Um, to be honest, the transition to LA was well, it's on the outside it may have seemed like difficult, but I think God really, really just like made the process so smooth that
Mm.
he was able to really provide everything I needed. Yeah, one thing we didn't discuss is when I moved, which was during a global pandemic. So yeah, so I guess if I could pick any time to make the biggest statement about moving, I certainly picked one of the hardest times. But it also proves that, if I could do it, then I hope I can prove that if I can do it, then that it's possible for anyone else with big dreams too.
Yeah.
So yeah, I would say a lot of things that people worry about when they move ended up turning out fine for me. Like I wasn't I knew I even though I didn't really have a plan, I ended up just being really grateful for getting housing and getting work pretty easily and not having to worry about that. I would say interestingly enough, the thing that I worried about the most and prayed for the most was also ended up being the most difficult thing, which was, I think, to find really good community. Um, not, not, well, I'll say it didn't help. The pandemic certainly didn't help, but I was already kind of concerned about that even before the pandemic. But the pandemic didn't help because it made, actually meeting with people difficult and you had to be more creative with meeting new people, whether it's through just Zoom calls or
Mm.
FaceTime calls, and kind of just being willing to put yourself out there even more than I
Yeah.
had already planned to. Just being able to be willing to just even cold call someone on a Zoom call just to get to know them. It kind of felt like dating, even though I was just looking for friends. And
Yeah.
you just had to be like okay with cold calling someone just to be friends with them. So that was interesting, but a challenge that I was willing to accept. And
Mm.
yeah, and I think it was just more of a trying to adjust to the the situation of the pandemic and figuring out just what everyone's comfort levels were, because I do have people I know out in LA that in other times I would have met up with them immediately or tried, really hard to schedule something early on. But with the pandemic, it just kind of meant you had to kind of take things as they come because of people's comfort levels. And obviously you want to like keep safe and things like that. And everyone just dealing with the emotional trauma that is the pandemic. So there's people that I've really wanted to reach out to that I still haven't done so, and it's been over a year, and I think I'm just kind of waiting for like the right timing of things to kind of get in a better place. But I think everyone can kind of um, relate to that and understand that. Like I think just the way to build community is just not the same as before, but
Mm.
that doesn't mean that people don't um, want to build community. In fact, I think they do even more. It just is different now. Yeah,
Yeah, so true. I remember
yeah,
when we were on in the
yeah,
lockdown, me and my friends, we had to like figure out ways we could still hang out. And one of
yeah.
them was playing Among Us, and we
Yes,
would
yes,
be on FaceTime
yes,
and just like play it together. And we would have to mute our mics because we would be,
yeah,
talking too much about it. But
yeah.
so
Well,
interesting.
yeah. Actually, actually, thank you for saying that because I do want to give a shout out to the friends that I'm currently like in community with
Yeah.
because we literally also bonded through Among Us. It was a thing where we ended up just playing every week, and then like I'd never met like most of the people in the group in person, and just over time, just through even something like that, like playing games, you just really get to know people. And I think the idea of people showing up week after week, you just it's I mean it's the closest thing we could get to like the kind of spontaneous hangouts you would have in
Yeah.
person where you're like, hey everyone, like come over game night, but instead it's virtual. And then I think that was a big saving grace during the pandemic, and I really want to thank the friends who invited me to that and were part of that. You know who you are. um
So sweet. So it was
yeah,
like one friend you knew invited you to the game to hang out with them? Or how
yeah,
did
it
you
was so
connect with them?
nice. Yeah, so I mean, I was just really grateful to have friends of friends
Mm.
to introduce me to other people. So that's how I first started making community. Is I have this really sweet friend. Well, you know her, Anna, and
Yes.
so she's a really great connector, and she just connected me to everyone she knew in LA, and through that, she connected me to another great connector. His name is Sean, and he just really he did something that was just truly different in during that time of the pandemic. He just like didn't we had gone together for like one FaceTime call just to get to know each other, and then
Mm.
he decided to just invite me to like a virtual game night that weekend that he's having with his friends, and particularly friends that he had already like been a friend group with from high school. And I just thought that was so kind of him to do, especially during those pandemic times when people were kind of more isolated in their bubbles. And I don't blame anybody for doing that, but the way he invited me just kind of felt the way that I would have expected, like in an in-person thing of like, hey, you want to like come to my place and hang out? Like people weren't doing that anymore during the pandemic because they couldn't. And so
Yeah.
this friend giving me this simple invitation of like, hey, do you want to join my friends at this virtual game night at a time when I had just moved out here was really, um, I don't know, it just made a really big impact on me. And yeah, uh, so he's definitely been him and his group of friends and the friends I've made as a result of that have definitely been just a huge blessing to me during this time and kind of shown me that yeah, you can build a community even during a pandemic. So
Yeah, I love
yeah,
that. I mean, just
yeah,
listening to, like, your story, I feel like everything is, like, God's timing for you. I mean, even in the pandemic to, like, make friends, especially, like, online friends and to have that connector is definitely so awesome. And you talked about finding a job. Could you tell us what your job is and what do you do for your job?
yeah. So before I came out here, I was um trying to figure out, again, what I wanted to do as a creative career specifically. I had that experience when I was in high school of just really having a passion for editing. And so I think that was still kind of like my ultimate goal.
Mm.
But along the way, I took some detours. I was like a wedding photographer for a couple years, and then I've done filmmaking, editing on like various levels in different spaces. So when I came out to LA, I had a big body of freelance work, but I was looking to get into the film and television industry
Yeah.
just because that is out here in LA, and I wanted to try it. And
Yeah.
so for the first 6 months, I was still doing freelance work, but just being very blessed to be connected, even with contacts in Texas who are connecting me to contacts in California to edit stuff. So I was doing all sorts of things. And then I was really fortunate to just get an interview as an assistant editor, which is kind of the track to becoming an editor in like the motion picture industry,
Yeah.
on a film called Searching 2, which is the sequel to a film called Searching that came out in 2018 that had John Cho in it, and it was a big hit. It started off as like a low budget film that came out at Sundance, and then when it released in theaters, it became this huge hit. And so I remember that film meant a lot to me as well because of the Asian American representation it had with
Mm.
John Cho, and also just yeah, just being it was like this. It's a thriller screen film, and it just kind of showed that Asian Americans can be main characters in thrillers and just be like just people, ordinary people too, and not like the stereotypes that we like put them in. So
Yes.
yeah,
Love representation.
exactly. So it was a dream come true to just be part of the sequel of a film. I mean, it's not a sequel. It follows a different cast of characters, but to be part of um, this just movement to uh, tell these kinds of stories and be part of a really great team has been, yeah, a true blessing. So that's what I'm currently working on. Um, and please support the film when it comes out.
Yes. We definitely will. I'm gonna be like my friend Allison was, like, the assistant video editor.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
definitely cool.
Yeah.
Um, what do you love the most about being a video editor or shooting? And is this something that you wanna do for the rest of your life? And if so, could you tell us why? And if not, tell us why or kind of elaborate a little bit more.
Well, I mean, what I love most about being a video editor for me is just I don't know, it's just the way I was just wired. The way I
Mm.
wired and think about life and stories and things anyway is a very similar approach to like what video editing is. I just love being able to have all the footage ready for me to just kind of play with. It's just like a mental playground. And
Yeah.
that's how I felt like when I was doing it at like 15 years old. I felt like I was just putting together this puzzle. It was like all the pieces are there. You just gotta like put them in the right places, and you
Ooh,
create
I
this just
like that,
beautiful,
yeah.
beautiful image. Yeah. And so I feel like editing is still no different to me. And even just the way I kind of like think about my life, I just feel like as I live life, I'm just accumulating more puzzle pieces, and I'm just putting together and trying to like see the narrative of my life and how it's unfolding. And so it's just really fun for me in that way to just play play with play with stuff.
So good. I love that, like, imagery, because I remember people ask me why I love video editing, and honestly, I was like, I feel like that's visually where the story comes together. I think it's one thing to write the script and to kinda, like, storyboard it, and you can see it there, but when you're actually putting all the pieces together that were shot and you're like, "Wow, like, this is coming together, it's the story of it all," and so, Allison, do you find any ethnic and culture clashes with Christianity?
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say they're clashing in a way that they're intentionally trying to rub against each other, but I think as Asian Americans who are Christians, it is interesting to note the differences that we uh, have in our culture versus yeah, just what uh, Jesus might offer us. For example, in Asian American culture, especially being in the United States or in Western, societies, especially as an immigrant culture.
Mhm.
There is this idea of meritocracy, like we're trying to work hard, um, for better or for worse, because we think, whether that's true or not, that we need to earn our way to something, whether it's to earn our way in school or to perform our way into school or to the right job and things like that. And I think a lot of that obviously is problematic and uh, just by itself. But also, I think knowing Jesus gives us a grace that we don't experience in meritocracy, which is that
Mhm.
we are loved and accepted just as we are, not how we perform. And I think it is a I think there is value in both of them, but and so I think having both of those is actually a really great balance of being like, it is good to strive towards excellence, but you shouldn't be doing it, for someone's approval or someone's love, because we don't need to in our identity as believers. And also, I think as any Christian that of any unique culture, the way even scripture is interpreted can cause unintentional issues uh, in terms of interpretation based on just, yeah, the unique experiences we come from. Like, for
Mhm.
example, I remember the idea of in Genesis, just even the verse about a man will leave his father and mother and be joined to his wife in one flesh in terms of marriage. I remember that being preached in a sermon, and that coming off not the way I think it was intended to be for an Asian American Christian audience. I think it wasn't intended to be harmful, but it came off as harmful
Yeah.
because for yeah, especially in Asian culture, we revere and respect our elders so much, and even on a literal sense, we have them living with us,
Mhm.
and so this idea of leaving them to even start a new family without really sitting down and understanding what that sounds like to another culture, and just maybe having discussions about the nuances of how you might want to phrase what you're trying to phrase, it can come off really hurtful, unintentionally or intentionally. So yeah, I think these are just a few things amongst a lot of things that just as Asian American Christians, and also just Christians of different cultures, all different as we're all different believers, as we encounter believers of different cultures or ethnic groups, that we can hopefully just continue to appreciate the nuance of each other, be more careful when we're having discussions, and also just show grace to each other in the times where we do misinterpret each other and misunderstand each other. So,
Yeah, so good. I definitely agree with you. Especially with that comparison of, yeah, in this Asian culture, we're always trying to work harder to kind of get that approval. Even in a sense, like even though our parents tell us that we're loved, we always want to like get the good grades or we want to have the best job. We want to make them proud. And then when we look at God and who he is and why he's such a wonderful father too is because he's like, I'm already so proud of you. I already love you, and you don't have to work for it. And it's such a beautiful thing. And but it's just like you said, no, we have to definitely be careful because we don't know who we could, based on their ethnic or cultural background, what might be odd to them, instead of like just basing it off of this Western Christian, what we've turned into this Western Christian culture. And so definitely I think it's really beautiful that everyone has different ethnicities and culture backgrounds. And I think that's what makes us also unique and still God's people, is that we're all so different, but we all still worship the same God. Um, and so thank you for sharing, Allison. What are some resources that you loved learning from and would recommend? And, this can be anything from like creativity based or faith wise. So what would you recommend for us to listen to, or to look at?
so I have some of them right here. So this is creativity wise. I guess if we're on video, I can show you this. Creativity wise, this is one of my favorite books on creativity. It is by a psychologist named Adam Grant. All of his work is great. This book is called Originals, and the subtitle is How Nonconformists Move the World. So it's literally how to, approach life in the workplace, specifically with a sense of nonconformity and creativity, and kind of see where that happens. And it also, it challenges, even some stereotypes that we might have about uh taking these leaps of faith and stuff. Like,
Yeah.
I one size does not fit all. I personally thought that moving out to LA with no plan in sight was the right move for me, and I would recommend it to myself, but I would not recommend it to everyone.
Yeah.
And Adam Grant agrees. He kind of talks about how, even statistically, it actually might be more in your favor to have a um, stable job or plan, and then work on your side plan or your dream plan, and get to a place where you are solid
Mm.
in, even either having like backup savings or a backup plan before you like make the leap. And yeah, so it's just like, I think it's a really good book that balances, the dreams that I love to go after like full force, with data that also supports that, this how to go about it in like a practical manner. So this is a great book. I encourage it. But and then also spiritually, to kind of talk about some of the themes we've talked about today about authenticity and finding your own voice. I would say this book by J.S. Park, The Voices We Carry, is really
Ooh,
great.
okay.
Um, J.S. Park is a hospital chaplain, and he also has a very just a really great social media presence on Instagram and Twitter.
Mm.
And he's also a Christian I really admired for not being afraid to talk about faith and doubt and struggles and suffering. He was a former atheist too, so I think he really comes as a way of like, this isn't always easy for me to be a Christian, and there are so many things, maybe I still don't understand, but I like choose to be a Christian,
Yeah.
kind of thing.
Yeah.
But and he chooses to sit with people in the suffering and be like, yeah, like, this is hard. Let's not shy away from talking about how hard it is. And also, I want to say that book, or this book, is not particularly, or it is about suffering, but it is more specifically telling you how to break free from, yeah, the different voices, that external, internal, that may be affecting um how to be like your authentic self, even as a believer. So yeah.
Awesome. I love those. I love new book recommendations. Definitely will check them out. And I'll definitely also link them down below too if anyone else wants to read them or find them, or order them. So they will be down there below as well. And Allison, where can we connect and how can we support you?
Yeah, so you can connect with me on my Instagram at alleviate, which will probably be in the description box, and I often have to spell it for people. It's a play on a nickname that I had when I was younger, and I
Yeah.
just kind of kept it as a brand. But yeah, Instagram, alleviate. Feel free to connect with me via email and stuff like that too. If you have any questions about, whether it's editing or have a creative career or anything like that, I always love connecting with new people. And how you can support me, like I was saying, please support Searching 2 when it comes out. Um, I'll let you know more details when I know about that. But yeah, it would be so great to see people show up for and support the film.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Again, like those will be down below, and for sure cannot wait to watch Searching 2. I haven't seen Searching 1, but I'm gonna go watch it after this. And I'll let you know how I feel about I'm not really into thrillers, but for you, I'll watch it,
Oh, thank
Allison.
you. I appreciate that.
And the last question is, what is a word of encouragement that you would give to someone who is struggling with their creativity and faith?
um, yes, I'd say take your time, but I guess I would also want to know specifically what they're struggling with. But in
Mm,
terms of like general advice, I would say, um, take your time. Everyone is on a different timeline in terms of what they're struggling with. If they feel far from the goals and the dreams that they want to reach, um, the path may not be the quickest path or the most scenic path, but in my experience, it was you will still get there.
yeah.
And yeah, just even reflecting on the path that I've been on here, there are certainly times where I still look back and I think, man, I wish I have like done things differently.
Mm,
But I also have to think about I wouldn't be where I am today if I didn't take that specific long path and then just try to make better decisions going forward. So I don't know if that helps, but
No, it does. I really like that.
yeah,
And just saying that to take your time and you'll get there eventually, you know? And
yeah,
so thank you so much, Allison, for being here today. I love this conversation. I felt like just hearing your experience and your journey to where you are now is it's definitely inspiring and and for you just to like trust in God and still have doubt and still be like okay but you know how do how do I take that next step even though I'm not sure what the next step is? So thank you so much, Allison. I love
yeah.
you and appreciate you.
I love you too, Rosie. And also just thank you for creating this space for, people like me and even and especially our other guests and our listeners, your listeners, to yeah, just to hear perspectives of other people. I just want to say that as fellow storytellers, so much of my life wouldn't be where it is today if I didn't hear the stories of other people who had
Mm,
gone before me and done things I just couldn't even imagine without knowing that knowing their story. And after hearing their story, it gave me so much encouragement to be like, someone else is walking through that too. And so I hope that this podcast will be that for somebody. I know it will. So
yeah, I definitely agree with you. Just like hearing other people's stories and it's so good. And I think anyone who listens to your story or who can relate to you would definitely be encouraged. And because you're definitely an encouraging person, I can't like stop saying that, but it's it's so true. And so I hope whoever's listening and you guys feel free to reach out to Allison as well. She's a really great person to just like ask questions and she'll respond and so again, thank you so much, Allison. I'm excited for where God takes you and um, where He's leading you now. So with that, this is the end of this episode. Bye, guys.
bye.
Thank you so much for tuning in on this episode of Turn on the AC. We hope you enjoyed this conversation as much as we did. If you don't already, follow us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and any other platforms that you're listening to. You can also follow me on Instagram at rose.xiong and Turn on the AC's podcast on Instagram at the.asiancreatives. You can find and watch us on YouTube at rose.xiong. Leave us a comment, rating, and a review. And if you enjoyed this episode, share it with your friends and family. If you enjoy listening to Turn on the AC and would love to support us, you can give us a donation on Anchor. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll catch you guys on our next episode. Bye, guys.